Awesome. So we're here with Josh Machiz from the Nasdaq, Chief Digital Officer. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just so everybody knows. We're actually from Online Geniuses, and Josh is here for an AMA, asking as many questions as they want in the Online Geniuses Slack platform, and then you'll be here to answer them. But before we get to that, so give us a little bit insight about you and what you do at the Nasdaq.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for having me. Love Online Geniuses, and everything in your community is super awesome. I've been with Nasdaq a little over 6 years. When I started, they had 0 social media following. So there was, they had 20,000 fans just after Facebook had gone public. There was a number of Twitter handles that were just kind of like various names, various like sub-brands. The Instagram account, we couldn't find like the password. Like it was just, and I came in and I was actually on the PR team. I wasn't on the social media team because there wasn't a social media team. And I was like, so who's posting the photos from the bell ceremony to Facebook and to Instagram and to Twitter? And they were like, well, there's an intern who posts the album of the photos to Facebook the next day.
Wow.
Like, well, the next day, like on the internet is done, right? Like that doesn't work for the day and age. And I literally just picked it up, and it started with just from my phone, doing tons and tons of social, live at the bells, interacting with different brands. I think the most interesting thing that people don't realize about Nasdaq is that we have so many incredible companies that ring the bell every day, twice a day. And so it's not just one company. And even if they're not even coming in for a bell, maybe they're coming in for an interview, there's so much opportunity to interact with big brands, big influencers, CEOs, all sorts of executives who have really, really big followings and could actually help Nasdaq grow their following. So, you know, anytime someone who was famous was coming in, I was trying to grab a photo with them to make sure that it was on the Nasdaq accounts, so that when they reshare it, all of the followers of the basketball player or the CEO or whoever they are, that they start to think about following Nasdaq, that we make fun, interesting, exciting content.
Love it. So the biggest thing today is actually the IPO of SurveyMonkey.
Yes.
So we actually have questions that came in prior, and just so everybody knows, you guys can actually ask questions in the Online Genius group. We want to make this as interactive as possible. But tell us a little bit about the preparation for an IPO from a social media standpoint.
Oh my gosh, there's so much preparation.
You're running around today all over the place.
I was running around, but it's not just me. There is an entire team here at Nasdaq, and I think one of the biggest misgivings about social media is that it's an intern behind a computer, right? I was on the webcast with employees for SurveyMonkey, but Michelle Mathis was here running around doing all the coverage here in New York. We have Leanne Alfaro, who is out in Ottawa covering all of the happenings there in SurveyMonkey. Anna's on the West Coast, and then we have Meg in Portland. So we have members of the social team in every single market, at every single office of SurveyMonkey, doing their best to make sure that they're not only capturing the moments, but making sure that they mean something.
Definitely, definitely. And I actually saw you're really into live. And like we said, this is live right now. So tell us a little bit about where you see the future of live video and how it interacts with Nasdaq itself.
Yeah, I think live is huge. And you know, we were certainly the first stock market, but I think we were one of the very first Facebook Live producers.
Every day I see something new.
And we're constantly going live. And I think that the reason is that actually I learned from the broadcast team here. So like Ron and the entire broadcast team were doing all these hits, and they were all out to broadcast networks. And Facebook was just coming to this point where they were like, now you can go live on Facebook. And so it kind of was like just this perfect moment of studios and the internet coming together. And I was just really lucky to learn from them and understand that there was this opportunity. And then it was the relationship with Facebook and building that we could make this a platform for distribution for Nasdaq, for financial content, for educational content, and for like kind of business fun content.
Yep. Yeah, I see a lot of it on your Instagram. You guys have a lot of like little fun videos going on. It's really exciting on that side. But I guess the other big question we had coming in was, what exactly is your team's goal? What's the social media goal at Nasdaq?
Yeah, so we have a lot of goals. Certainly awareness is number one, right? Because it's not just about the Nasdaq brand's awareness. When a company lists with Nasdaq, they expect our awareness to be a force for good for their company and for making sure the message gets as far and as wide as possible.
Yep.
So that's, you know, not just the Nasdaq accounts, that's our CEO, Adina Friedman, that's our president, Nelson Griggs, that's having all of our executives. And you'll even see employees that work in the market site that are here on the regular, they are constantly tweeting and sharing because they realize that they're part of that process of dissemination and making sure that the message goes as far and wide as it can.
It was awesome. I see on some of your live videos, you guys automatically start sharing it. You're like, hold on, we're going to share the actual video as you're broadcasting just to get it out to your friends, family, everybody who can see it.
Yeah, I mean, we love doing the live sharing. I think that's definitely a good hack for anybody thinking about doing a live video.
Yeah.
Get
Share
lots
it as
of
much as
people to
possible.
reshare it. So if they're resharing it, that notifies their friends that they reshared it, and it creates this kind of ripple effect. But I think the thing I love about live video now is that it's democratizing media.
Yes.
In good ways and bad ways, right? Like we saw the bad with like an Alex Jones, but there's so much good with young, interesting broadcasters that are making exciting original content that's interesting, like the Young Turks, like all of these different younger broadcast outlets that are able to create content because the internet enabled them to be able to do it.
I think it's awesome. And that's where, like at Online Geniuses, we're just starting to do this live where we're trying to make it interactive. And I know you talk a lot of making it interactive with these lives, so it's not just this back and forth interview. So like, we have a question that just came in from Taylor, which is, what are some of the top KPIs for digital at a large brand like Nasdaq that doesn't sell a product or widget?
That's a really good question. So our KPIs are varied, but like I said, the first one is definitely brand awareness.
Okay.
Then engagement, and so, like, because you know engagement matters, and I look a lot more at interactions than just like vanity likes, because I think people sometimes get really into the number of likes, but really what matters is if you're starting a conversation.
Yep.
And so I'm always key to look further into those kinds of metrics around people actually interacting with the content and feeling like it's a two-way conversation. Because the second, particularly with live video, it shifts from being a conversation to becoming just television. Because if you can't interact with it, it might as well be TV.
Yes.
And I think that's where people lose, is a lot of people try and do it like, oh, you can't talk back to me. Well, if you're not inviting the questions, then you're missing out on that opportunity.
Is that, and here we just have another one came in from Pamela. Can you share, and we hit on this a little bit, but tell us about the strategy behind the launch of Nasdaq.
Oh, sure. Hi, Pamela. So the strategy behind the launch of our channels, well, we actually had to construct a brand voice.
Okay.
And think about, you know, what is Nasdaq? We're educational, we're serious because we're business, but we're still a little bit more fun.
Yes.
And it's kind of thinking about the tone of voice, particularly for social and for your Twitter account, is super important. You know, there are brands that are really great at doing sick burns, like a Wendy's, right? But Nasdaq has no business doing sick burns.
You don't want to make a mixtape?
No, I don't think so.
The Nasdaq mixtape.
So you know, it's knowing your lane, but also knowing that you need to stretch your lane. So I kind of think of us as like, this place is a dream factory where all of these incredible innovators come and have, you know, rang the bell and had this experience, and they're kind of like our lifeblood. So I feel like everything kind of emanates from that entrepreneurial dream. And our team puts out a lot of great content around entrepreneurship, and we have this great show that's coming back for season 2 called Cultural Capital, which is kind of like an MTV Cribs for office spaces.
That's awesome.
So we go to really cool startups. We went to 10 last year, and we're doing it again this year, where we go, we find out how they hire for the kinds of young people they want to work at their companies.
Interesting.
And I think, one of them was actually SurveyMonkey. So
Really?
they did it, and they got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views from our Facebook Watch show about their essentially just running around their headquarters showing off all the cool things in SurveyMonkey's office.
And I guess what's awesome about that is you guys, I mean, you're the house of tech, basically. Like,
Yeah.
And whatnot. Basically, if you're going into these places, maybe one day they could be here ringing the bell with the IPO. So, like, you just never know with that.
Exactly, and that's the benefit of
Yeah.
digital, right? You can touch so many more
Yep.
people by creating content,
Yeah.
and I think people forget that content is a way to touch people. And it's also a way to expand our brand. Like, people think about us as tech, but they don't realize that, that Kraft is listed and that Pepsi just switched from the New York Stock Exchange to Nasdaq. So we have all these big consumer brands that aren't necessarily tech, but maybe are just trying to align themselves with a more forward brand.
So another question just came in is, how do conversations equal profit for the NASDAQ?
So conversations do equal profit. I think the way that they do is the kind of content engagement
Okay.
that we were talking about. It's like if we can show a private company that from early on we can do something really fun on digital with them and continue to help them as their brand's growing, that we're showing them the power of the NASDAQ platforms.
Yep.
That actually is a big sales ticket
Yes.
in terms of proving our competitive advantage. Our following is larger than our competitors, but more than that, it's we're a more engaged brand. People are more likely to have a conversation with us because we're a little more down to earth, a little more fun, a little more relatable.
Exactly. And so we just had a question come in from Rachel Davis on Online Geniuses. Who do you consider your audience if awareness is one of your main goals?
Yeah, so our audience is varied. The lowest, I wouldn't say the lowest. I think the most obvious, kind of baseline audience is all entrepreneurs
Yes.
of any kind.
Yes.
Doesn't matter whether you're a CEO now or you're thinking about founding a company or you're just really interested in Shark Tank. Like it's that audience, because we're building from that audience to then the investor audience, and the buy side and the sell side, and thinking about all of the different players within those ecosystems are kind of higher level audiences. But the kind of the more emotional feeling audience is that everyday entrepreneur, and maybe they're not going to go public, maybe they're starting a small business, but it's any kind of upstart is kind of the initial base audience from which I build on top of that all of our other more specific, more granular audiences.
And I'm assuming it's a very heavily regulated industry, which we all know, but how does that relate and how does it affect your social presence, right? Because social, you even said it before, it's like it has to be fun, has to be exciting, entertaining. How does that mesh?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the way that we do it is a social media management tool.
Okay.
And a lot of regulated businesses use various ones. We use Sprinkler, other people use Spreadfast. There are other options out there like Buffer that are great. And we use Sprinkler because it gives us this approval pathway,
Okay.
where a piece of content can be put out by one person and then sent to other folks for approval.
Mm-hmm.
And what this does is it actually democratizes social. So we have plenty of non-social media professionals who are just marketers who, if they're at an event or at a conference, they can open up Sprinkler on their mobile phone, take a photo, write a caption, submit it, and it goes to an approval chain to one of the social team members who maybe they make a little change to the caption, and then it goes out across all of our channels. But that has actually helped because, social is we're still a smallish team. We can't do it all. And by having it kind of democratized through the marketing, the entire marketing group, it gives us that opportunity to be nimble and be everywhere.
Yes. And being everywhere can be difficult with a small team, but what would you say are your top social channels?
Definitely number one is Facebook.
Okay.
And then, I think a close second is Twitter. But I think, in all honesty, our most engaged and most rapidly growing audience is on Instagram.
Really?
There's a lot of young entrepreneurs on Instagram. there's a lot of activity and enthusiasm, and I think it's kind of most people's channel, and that's, I think, one reason I'm really bullish on Instagram television, because I think that people aren't using it properly yet. I see a lot of people still doing horizontal videos that they've tried to change and put on vertically on IGTV, and I think that I'm starting to see a few of the creators I love start to create firsthand content for Instagram television, and I think that it's going to be a huge opportunity, that there'll be a whole number of kind of like micro shows, I'd call them, that people will start to watch, that I think is coming. So that's, I think, the most exciting for me. But also, you know, Pinterest has made a big change to their algorithm. So now, if you're a business, you're not seeing followers, you're seeing, and I actually like this, because they kind of killed, you know, people are so stuck on the followers, and this is more about monthly engagement now, is the way they've changed it. So, you know, I think that it has this opportunity to be what everybody goes to for visual search. And what I've noticed is that I'm seeing more and more people on the street scrolling Pinterest. And I think that is often just an indicator. I always look for kind of 2 or 3 things when I'm on the street. It's, what are young people doing on their phones? What are people doing in the subway? Like, what are the things that they're doing when they're a little mindless? And these are the places I'm seeing them spend it. They're either on Instagram, or they're on Pinterest, or they're in a podcast app.
Now, I did read an article recently that you guys just started on Snapchat. Is that correct?
So we've been on Snapchat for a few years. And we use it more for kind of recruiting and like talent acquisition.
Interesting.
But it's definitely still a channel. I think the problem is that most people's engagement went really down after Instagram launched IG Stories, and I poll anytime I meet a young person. I'm like, so which are you using? And they're like, well, I still maintain my streak with my friends on Snap, but mostly now I post my content to Instagram Stories. So that to me is a little scary for them. I think what I'm more excited about is what's the next social platform? Because if you think about it, like, we had LinkedIn, then Facebook, then Twitter, then like Instagram, then Snap, then what's the next big social platform? And for a while there, I thought it was going to be Musical.ly, and then they got acquired, and now they're TikTok. So I am a little bit of like, you know, I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's audio related.
I hear it's the future of voice. That's all Gary Vaynerchuk preaches, is the future of voice.
I am like big on voice. I think voice is huge. I think particularly with all these voice-enabled devices, voice shows are going to be even bigger than they are with podcasts. And I think there's apps like Anchor for making your own podcast. There's Breaker, which is kind of like a social podcast app, which I really like. But I haven't yet found, and I'd love to hear from the community, if somebody thinks there's a next big social network,
Rachel just
let us know.
She said, yeah, she's agreeing with you. Yes, Pinterest is the new Google, at least for entrepreneurs and creatives. That's how I see it. So
I agree.
She's
with
on board
Rachel.
with Pinterest.
Totally, 100%.
How is, another question just came in, how is conversation impact measured, on profit measured? So how is conversation impact on profit measured?
Oh, I mean, it's really
difficult.
It's a really tough correlation. And honestly, like, it's a lot like all marketing.
Yes.
It is very hard to prove the ROI, right, of all of your marketing. But I think that as far as it goes is that because you get so much data from a piece of social content that you can then give to a client, that's way more valuable than letting them know that a print ad ran in a magazine or right? Because it's like you have an idea of the distribution, but you don't know how many people looked at it. But with any kind of social piece of content, you have all the measurement, and most likely you have an audience that you can give them of the people that engaged with that content.
And it's only getting better. I mean,
and the measurement's only
as long as you
better.
can understand how to read it. Sometimes when you print out the Facebook report, it's like, all right, I don't.
Right, you don't know what.
There's a lot going on.
There's
here.
like almost too much information.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's still that problem of
Yes.
like all of the platforms give you so much information that it becomes hard to
No one knows
actually
what to do with it.
understand. And I think they need to do a better job of that. Everybody does.
With that, does the Nasdaq put money behind your posts? So a big thing is, it's pay to play pretty much on Facebook.
It's pay to play on all platforms.
Yes.
I honestly, I think that that's the biggest misnomer in like 2018 is when people say, oh yeah, like we post all this stuff and we're not gaining followers. I'm like, are you doing paid?
Yes.
And are you thinking seriously about the targeting you're putting on that paid advertising? Because what I see a lot is two strategies: no paid, or the boost post strategy, which is just they'll boost stuff on Facebook and Instagram to just the entire United States.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you can have the opportunity to do a targeted ad,
Yes.
think really hard about the kinds of people that want that content and actually want to watch it. Because nobody wants to watch ads. Give them the things that they actually want to watch.
So how granular do you get with content creation? Like, do you have with your team, are you sitting behind and studying the data to figure out, all right, this content will match well with this audience or whatnot?
It's a lot of testing, because sometimes we do things and they work on one platform and not others.
Okay.
And the smartest thing I think to do is choose the first platform it should go to, and the one that you as a marketer believe is the right platform for it, and then try all the others, and then take a look and see how they did, and then reassess. Because honestly, sometimes I think something is super right for Instagram, and then it turns out it took off on LinkedIn or another platform or Tumblr. Like you just don't necessarily know until and it's kind of a trust your intuition and the data. And so kind of balancing intuition and data is kind of the way I look at it.
And with that, where do you see, so I mean, IGTV is fairly new, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see it fitting in with Nasdaq specifically? I'm sure you have a game plan behind you.
We've been thinking about it a lot and playing with it. We haven't quite hit the right stride for it. I think it's going to be a series of some kind.
Okay.
Something that's a little more episodic, that's something that you can get into and get out of, and that it's short.
Yes.
I think that it's probably the kind of 1 to 3 minute time frame is probably the best for IGTV, because if you think about it, like I've totally watched like Square Instagram videos for at least a minute, right?
Yeah.
But not longer than that.
No.
And then I scroll by. But if it's vertical and like it's taking up my entire screen, and especially with like the new iPhones where they're like huge screens.
They don't even fit in your
right?
pocket
like,
anymore.
They don't even. So
it's just an iPad basically.
like you're literally staring at an iPad, which is essentially a
TV screen.
TV screen.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, there's this big opportunity. But every content provider I've seen so far has done a lot of like kind of, they've taken stuff they've already made with horizontal intention and verticalized it. So there's a lot I think there's still a lot to learn. And I'm actually surprised it's taken as long as it has. And I don't know if that's a warning sign or not, but I'm still bullish on it because I think that it was a great idea.
Yes.
And I think that it just, people need to adjust their kind of the content creation to actually be specific to it. And the content creators that focus on it will be successful, just like the early days of like Vine, when like the Vine creators.
Yep, and that
like,
blew up.
You have to, if you know the platform and you create for that platform and you know how to do it, then you'll be successful.
That's what's so important. It's like you can't just take a billboard ad and expect it to work on your phone, right? You have to make it correct for that specific phone.
I think that's it's with every platform. Like you can't, you have to think about, how do I create for this platform and how do I make it specific that's it makes sense for this platform? Because a lot of people will just go and just post all of their content to all their platforms and wonder why some aren't growing. It's like, well, you're not really catering to that community.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Josh. That's all the time we have. It's 1:30 on the dot. So thank you so much. It was great meeting with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to the Online Geniuses community. And if you guys have any questions, you can always continue to Slack me, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks.